If Mom had just hung up the phone like she was supposed to, I'd still believe she loved me. It started like any normal night. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the hospital, tired but glad the day was over. I called my mom, like I always did, just to check in. It was a habit I never broke, no matter how exhausted I was. She picked up on the second ring, her voice cheerful, like nothing was ever wrong between us. We talked for a few minutes, about work, the weather, and Eli, my younger brother, who had just started a new job. I told her I was proud of him, and she laughed softly, saying, "You always worry too much, Mara." It felt normal, familiar. For a moment, I thought maybe she actually liked talking to me. Then she said she had to go. "All right, honey, I'll talk to you later," she said. I told her good night, expecting to hear the click of the call ending. But it never came. I was about to hang up myself when I heard her voice again. "She actually thinks we love her." I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen. Eli laughed in the background, that same easy laugh he used when he got away with something. "Yeah, she's always been desperate for attention. Can't she tell she's just there?" "She was a mistake from the start," my mother said, almost like she was talking about a broken dish, not her daughter. The words sank in slowly, one by one, each heavier than the last. My chest tightened, and the room around me blurred. I sat there, holding my phone against my ear, listening to them tear me apart like I wasn't even real. Eli kept going. "She tries too hard. It's kind of sad." Vivian laughed again. "She'll never get it. Always calling, always needing to feel loved. If she knew how we really felt." Her voice trailed off into a laugh that didn't sound like her anymore. It sounded cruel. Familiar, but different. I didn't say a word. I didn't hang up. I just listened until they moved on to another topic. Something about dinner plans. I stared at the wall, not really seeing anything. My heart was beating too fast, my hands were shaking. All those years I'd spent trying to make her proud, working extra hours, visiting every weekend, remembering birthdays, suddenly felt like a joke. I wasn't loved. I was pitied. Or worse, tolerated. For a long time, I couldn't move. I just sat there in the quiet after they finally hung up for real. My body felt hollow, like all the warmth had drained out of me. Then something inside me shifted. The sadness started to burn, turning into something sharper. I wasn't going to cry. Not this time. I turned off my phone, set it on the table, and stared at the blank screen. They thought I'd always come back. They thought I'd always keep loving them, no matter what. But that call changed everything. I decided right then, I was done being their mistake. I remembered when I was a kid, how everything always seemed to fall on me. Dad left when I was 9, and Mom cried for days, barely able to get out of bed. I didn't know much, but I knew I had to step in. I made breakfast for Eli, packed our lunches, and tried to keep Mom from falling apart. I thought that's what family was supposed to be, helping each other. Mom rarely noticed what I did. She'd look at Eli and smile, praising him for tying his shoes or helping set the table. I remember once, I stayed up all night finishing a school project so I could show her in the morning. When I brought it to her, she nodded distractedly, then asked Eli to help with the dishes. It stung, but I kept doing it anyway, thinking maybe one day she'd see me. Through all those years, I became the one everyone leaned on. Friends came and went, but at home, I was steady. I made sure bills were paid, dinners were cooked, and Eli had clean clothes for school. When Mom was sick or tired, I held the house together. I didn't mind much. I thought love worked that way. Over time, though, I started noticing a pattern. Mom's attention came in bursts, only when she needed something. When life got hard, I was there, solving problems, soothing her worries. When things were fine, she acted like I barely existed. Eli, on the other hand, always got the praise, the hugs, the thank you for nothing. That phone call confirmed it all. Listening to them laugh and talk about me as if I weren't even part of the family made something inside me shift. All those years I had been striving to be the perfect daughter, hoping for love and approval. It was never real. They didn't want me, not really. They only wanted what I could give them, my time, my care, my loyalty, without ever noticing who I was. I realized then that all the sacrifices, the long nights, the moments I gave up my own happiness for their comfort, had been taken for granted. I had been nothing more than a tool, a convenient solution to their problems. My heart ached, not because they said I was a mistake, but because deep down I had always known it, and now I had proof. I thought about the small ways I had tried to be enough, helping with homework, cooking dinners, being a shoulder to cry on. None of it mattered. None of it earned me the love I craved. I wasn't the child Mom wanted. I wasn't the one she ever truly loved. That realization hit harder than anything else in my life. I wasn't just disappointed. I was angry, but it was quiet, burning anger that started to take root deep inside me. I had spent years giving them my all, and now I knew what I really was to them: a caretaker, a shadow, a mistake they tolerated. And for the first time, I understood something important. I didn't have to stay. I didn't have to keep being the perfect daughter they never wanted. I could step back. I waited until the next morning, finally think about myself, trying to calm myself before I confronted Mom. My hands were still shaking, and my chest felt tight, but I knew I couldn't let it go. I needed answers. I found her in the kitchen, humming softly while making coffee. Eli was there too, leaning against the counter with that same smirk, like he was enjoying the tension in the air. I took a deep breath and spoke. "Mom, yesterday, I heard what you said. About me being a mistake. About me thinking you love me. Why would you say that?" She paused, eyes widening for just a moment before she shook her head slowly. "Mara, you must have misheard me. I never said that," she replied, her voice calm, too calm, like she was reading from a script. I stared at her, my heart sinking. That's what she did, always twisting things, making me doubt myself. I remembered all the times I'd been certain she loved me, only for her to make me feel like I imagined it. Eli snickered quietly, and it felt like a punch in the stomach. "You always overreact, Mara," he said, clearly enjoying my discomfort. I felt small, cornered, and angry all at once. Everything inside me wanted to yell, to throw things, to make them understand how much they had hurt me. But instead, I kept my voice steady. "I heard you. I know what I heard. And I know I'm not imagining how you really feel about me." Mom shook her head again, sighing like I was being ridiculous. "You're making this bigger than it is. We love you. You're just sensitive." Her words felt like nails scratching across glass. I realized then that nothing I said would change her. Nothing I said would make her see me as her daughter, as a person worthy of love. Everything I had believed in, every hope I'd clung to, was gone. That night, I packed a bag. Clothes, some personal things, a few books I loved, and enough money to get by. I didn't make a sound. I moved through the house quietly, feeling the weight of years of being overlooked, unappreciated, and used. I glanced at Eli one last time. His smirk hadn't changed. I didn't care anymore what he thought. Mom was in the living room, pretending to watch television, unaware of what I was doing. I slipped out the door into the cool night air, leaving behind the house that had never felt like home, the family that had never truly wanted me. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see their faces or hear their voices. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Not happy, not safe, but free. I promised myself then, as the streetlights passed over my shoulder, that I would never give them another ounce of my loyalty, my time, or my love. I would survive on my own, for myself, and no one else. That night marked the end of who I had been, the perfect daughter, the caretaker, the one who always forgave. I was leaving her world behind, and I was never going back. I found a small apartment in Dayton, nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a roof I could call my own. The rent was tight, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I didn't have to answer to anyone or pretend to be someone I wasn't. Work became my anchor. Long shifts at the hospital kept my mind busy and my hands moving. I focused on my patients the way I had always wanted someone to focus on me, listening, helping, caring without judgment. It felt strange at first, pouring myself into others while my own heart ached, but slowly, it gave me purpose. Lucas Grant, a paramedic who worked closely with our unit, noticed me one evening. He was quiet, calm, and had a way of observing people without making them feel exposed. One night, after I had stayed hours past my shift, he handed me a cup of coffee and said softly, "You're doing too much. Take a break." I wanted to brush him off, to tell him I was fine, but something about his tone made me pause. We started talking more over the next few weeks. Not about family drama or past pain, just about life, patience, and small victories. He never pushed, never judged. He simply listened. And slowly, I began to realize what genuine care felt like: simple, steady, and unselfish. I found small moments of happiness in my new routine. Cooking my own meals, decorating my apartment just the way I liked, even taking walks in the quiet evenings. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for the first time, I felt alive in my own life. But underneath it all, the betrayal still burned like a hidden fire. It didn't matter how many hours I worked or how many friends I made. The memory of that call, of Mom and Eli laughing about me, stayed. Some nights, when the apartment was silent, the words echoed in my mind, sharper than any pain I had felt at work. I wanted closure, a way to stop the burning. I needed them to understand, even if they never admitted it, that I had heard the truth and I hadn't forgotten. I didn't want to hurt them, not really, but I couldn't let it go either. So I threw myself into building this new life, quietly planning, slowly gathering strength. Every patient I helped, every small kindness I showed, felt like a step away from the shadow of my past. But the fire of betrayal remained, a constant reminder that some wounds don't heal without facing the people who caused them. I wasn't lost anymore. I was rebuilding, piece by piece, and though the past followed me like a shadow, I knew I was getting close a little distance where I could finally face it, a little stronger in my new life. Just maybe. Then, confront them on one afternoon, my phone rang. The screen showed Mom's name. My heart sank, and I debated whether to answer. Something told me I should. "Hi, Mara," she said, her voice soft, careful. I haven't been feeling well. I might need some help with bills. Can you come by?" Her words sounded like the same old manipulation I had known all my life, but a small part of me hoped maybe she was serious this time. Maybe she had changed. Lucas noticed the tension in my face when I told him. "Don't do it," he said quietly, concern in his eyes. "You've built a life there. Don't let her pull you back into that mess." I knew he was right. I knew I should stay away. But curiosity, and maybe a need to see for myself, pushed me to go. I needed to know the truth. When I arrived at the house, it looked the same as it always had. Mom greeted me at the door, looking tired and pale, holding a folder of bills. Eli was lounging on the couch, scrolling his phone. "I'm really struggling, Mara," Mom said, her voice trembling just enough to seem real. "The bills are piling up, and I don't know how I'll manage." I followed her inside, glancing at the bills. Everything seemed normal. Nothing screamed emergency. I tried to keep my guard up, watching her closely. As the conversation went on, little details began to make me see the truth. Mom wasn't sick. She wasn't weak or struggling with anything serious. She was fine, well enough to keep the house running perfectly, with Eli sitting comfortably beside her. The whole scene was a performance, and I was the mark. I felt a familiar heat rising inside me, anger mixed with disappointment. All those years of caring, of being the one who fixed problems and kept everyone together, had been taken for granted. Now, even after I left, Mom was trying to use me again. I didn't argue. I didn't scold. I didn't cry. I just stood there, quietly observing the truth I had always known beneath the surface. They only wanted me when it benefited them. Without a word, I turned and left. Each step away from that house felt heavier than the last, but also freer. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The mask had fallen, and I finally saw them as they were. That day, I realized the depth of their manipulation. It wasn't just cruel words or neglect. It was calculated, deliberate, and aimed at keeping me under their control. I knew now that any hope of genuine care from them was gone. For the first time, I truly understood that I could never go back, not for love, not for duty, not for anything. The illusion was gone, shattered, and I walked away knowing I was done being their tool. The ache from that last visit turned into something sharp and purposeful. I stopped feeling like a broken thing and started thinking like someone who needed to fix a bad account. I went back to the one place I hadn't touched since Grandma's funeral, the little cedar chest in my old bedroom. I had avoided it because it smelled like her, but that night I sat on the floor and opened it. Inside were cards, a worn recipe book, and an envelope with Grandma's handwriting. The envelope had a folded paper that mentioned the house and a name I barely remembered, an old lawyer, Mr. Hale. Seeing his name made something click inside my head. I began quietly looking for paper trails. I drove to the county office during my day off and sat at a copier, scanning property records and deeds until my eyes blurred. The deed history had more entries than I expected. Names changed, dates overlapped, and a notary stamp didn't match the signature beside it. It wasn't obvious fraud to someone who didn't care, but to me it looked like a loose thread. I photographed every page and made careful notes. I didn't tell Mom or Eli what I was doing. If they suspected, they wouldn't stop me, They never tried to hide anything they didn't expect anyone to find. I told Lucas a little, just enough. He kept bringing me coffee and lending me his calm when panic wanted to stitch itself to my chest. He offered to drive me to appointments and to sit in waiting rooms. He didn't ask why I needed to comb through dusty files or call a name no one else remembered. He just did what he could. That help mattered more than I expected. Next, I tracked down Mr. Hale. He was older than I imagined, with slow, careful speech and a stack of files behind him. He remembered Grandma. He remembered the will. He told me there had been instructions, clear and modest, and then a confusing set of transfers after Grandma died. He produced a photocopy of a will and a ledger with initialed receipts. His copy showed a small lump sum and a note about allocation to granddaughter. He frowned when I asked about a later document transferring the house. There were some signatures that I never saw in person, he said. My assistant handled a few things. I'm sorry, Miss Ellison, but a long time passed before anyone questioned it. Hearing that made my hands shake, but not with fear. I asked him for anything he could provide, old correspondence, phone logs, the file notes that no one reads anymore. He boxed them up and put them in my car with a look that said he was relieved someone finally asked. I started to build a file of my own, copies of deeds, the will, medical bills, the ledger, and the envelope from Grandma. I organized it with tabs, dates, and questions. I wrote down what I wanted, a statement from the attorney, a demand for accounting, and, if needed, formal legal action. I made an appointment with a lawyer who handled estate disputes and laid everything on their table. The attorney didn't promise fireworks. She promised steps. Paperwork. Notices. A plan. I felt strange pride in the smallness of it. Letters sent, certified mail receipts, careful signatures. Revenge, for me, was not dramatic. It was a quiet reclaiming, documents placed where they belonged, truths named, and, finally, the small dignity of being acknowledged. I slept less and thought more. The anger that had once burned wild was now clever and patient. I had turned my hurt into a list of actions, and for the first time since the phone call, I could see a path that led away from being taken. With all the documents collected, I finally went to the lawyer's office with Lucas by my side. He didn't say much, just offered a steady presence, letting me do the talking and take the lead. The attorney reviewed everything, deeds, the will, bank statements, and letters, and confirmed that there was a strong case to file. We filled out the claim quietly but firmly. Every signature, every page, every note mattered. I felt the weight of years of betrayal shifting, now channeled into something real. When Vivian received the notice, I imagined her reaction. The polite male turned into panic as she realized her carefully crafted image of the selfless mother was cracking. She called Eli in a frenzy, her voice shaking, telling him the papers had come. He listened, unsure but agitated. He never expected me to follow through. Later that day, Eli called my cell. "Mara, please. Don't do this. Mom's falling apart. You're hurting her," he said, voice pleading. I felt the old ache of their manipulation rise for a moment, but it was different now. I was no longer the scared child who needed approval. I took a deep breath and said, calmly, "Now she knows how I felt when she said I was a mistake." There was silence on the line. He didn't know what to say. I hung up before he could reply, and it felt like closing a door on years of shadow and doubt. The legal process moved forward, and slowly, the family's secrets began to surface. Neighbors who had seen the way Vivian favored Eli while ignoring me quietly spoke when asked. Relatives who had once kept quiet now shared stories of small manipulations, favors withheld, and lies. The truth spread like ink in water, staining the careful image Mom had built over decades. People began to realize that the family everyone thought perfect had its own twisted undercurrents. Vivian, who had always smiled at social events and asked about everyone's lives, had built a reputation that was now falling apart. Eli, who had grown up in her shadow, looked uncertain and exposed, no longer the smug younger brother who could do no wrong. Every conversation, every document filed, every witness statement slowly built a full picture of what had really happened. The more the story unfolded, the clearer it became. I hadn't been imagining my pain. Their cruelty, their favoritism, their manipulation, it was all real, all deliberate, and finally, all being acknowledged. Through it all, Lucas stayed by my side, quietly steady. He didn't try to cheer me up or push me forward. He just let me take control, giving me the space to feel the satisfaction of justice slowly taking shape. For the first time, I realized that the world could see the truth. I could finally stop carrying the burden of lies alone. My voice, once silenced by fear and love, was now loud and clear, and nothing they said or did could erase that. The family's facade was gone, and the reality they had hidden for so long was out in the open. I felt a strange peace in that. The reckoning had begun, and I was no longer just the mistake they had claimed I was. The court date arrived quietly, but I felt the tension in the air like a heavy blanket. Vivian sat across the room, eyes darting nervously, hands clenched, trying to keep her composure. Eli was with her, but even he looked uneasy, shifting in his seat as the proceedings began. The judge went through the evidence carefully. Deeds, bank statements, letters, and the testimony from Mr. Hale, all of it lined up clearly. Vivian tried to argue, to downplay what she had done, but the proof was undeniable. When the ruling came, she had to repay the inheritance money to me, and the house was officially acknowledged as mine. She slumped back in her chair, pale and defeated. Eli stormed out immediately afterward, furious. He called me later, shouting and blaming Mom for everything. "You've ruined everything," he said, voice trembling with anger. "She's your mother, Mara. How could you do this?" I didn't respond. I let him yell and hang up. I didn't need his approval or anger. Word got out slowly. Vivian's friends, her neighbors, and even distant relatives began to see the truth. The woman they had admired as the perfect mother was now exposed for what she had always been: selfish, manipulative, and cruel. Invitations stopped coming, calls went unanswered, and she was left with the emptiness she had once forced me to feel. I felt none of the gloating I had imagined. I thought I would feel satisfaction, triumph, a rush of power. But when the final papers were signed and the money returned to me, I felt nothing. The revenge wasn't sweet, it was clean. It was final, and it removed the weight I had carried for so long, but it didn't fill any void inside me. In the quiet moments afterward, I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn her love, seeking approval that would never come. For so long, I had blamed myself for wanting her attention, for believing I could make her proud. Now I realized that her love was never something I needed. It had never been real, and I didn't have to keep chasing it anymore. I walked out of the courthouse and felt a strange lightness. The chains of guilt and longing that had held me to that house and to her expectations were gone. I could finally make decisions for myself without wondering if they would disappoint her. The money and the house were just symbols. What mattered was that the truth was acknowledged, and I was free from the control she had tried to keep over me for my entire life. Vivian's fall was complete, and though I didn't celebrate, I felt a quiet strength settle in me. I had reclaimed what was mine, and more importantly, I had reclaimed myself. For the first time, I could imagine a life where I didn't need anyone's approval, a life built only on what I wanted and needed. The past was still there, but its grip on me was gone. And that was enough. With the inheritance finally in my hands, I found a small house just outside the city. It wasn't extravagant, just a modest place surrounded by trees, quiet streets, and a sense of calm I hadn't known in years. I signed the papers with a strange mix of relief and disbelief. This was mine. No one could touch it or claim it. Lucas offered to help me move. He didn't make it feel like a favor, just a shared task, something two people did without judgment or expectation. We carried boxes, unpacked slowly, and arranged furniture in a way that felt right to me, not dictated by anyone else's taste. When we finished for the day, we sat on the small porch, looking out at the fading light over the trees. The silence wasn't heavy or tense, it was peaceful. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of past expectations pressing down. Lucas said nothing, just handed me a cup of coffee, and we watched the world grow quiet together. It felt like the beginning of something real, something steady. I wandered through the rooms later, touching the walls, imagining life here. No one would call me a mistake in this house. No one would dismiss my efforts or mock my kindness. For the first time, I felt the difference between existing for someone else and living for myself. I thought about Mom. I didn't forgive her, not yet, and maybe not ever. Her words and actions had cut deep, and I wasn't ready to let them slide. But I realized I didn't need to forgive her to move on. What mattered was that I had finally stopped blaming myself for her cruelty, for staying too long, for hoping she would love me. I had spent years bending to her expectations, and now I didn't have to anymore. I placed my grandmother's old recipe book on the kitchen counter, a small reminder of my roots and my past, but also of the family I could choose to keep close, those who truly cared, like Lucas. I felt a quiet pride in that. I didn't need the approval of the people who had hurt me. I had my own space, my own rules, and my own sense of worth. That night, I sat on the porch again, the air cool and still. I sipped my coffee slowly, letting the silence fill me. The anger that had driven me through months of planning and gathering evidence was finally quiet, replaced by something steadier. I felt safe. I felt capable. I felt free. Healing didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean forgiving. It meant reclaiming myself, setting boundaries, and knowing I could live without the love I never received. And in that quiet home, with the trees surrounding me and the future still wide open, I finally understood what peace could feel like. Months passed, and life in my new home settled into a quiet rhythm. The work at the hospital continued, the trees outside my window shifted with the seasons, and Lucas became a steady presence in my life, not intrusive, just there when I needed someone who understood. I had grown used to this peace, the kind that comes from being untangled from people who only take and never give. Then, one evening, my phone rang. The screen showed Mom's name. My stomach tightened for a second, but I didn't panic. I had learned to hold my ground. I answered. "Mara, please." Her voice cracked, weak and desperate. "I have no one left. I need you." I listened. Her words trembled, fragile, almost pleading. For a moment, I felt the old pang of hurt and longing, the instinct that had once made me run back to her no matter what. But I stayed silent. I didn't rush to forgive her. I didn't feel the need to fill the emptiness she had created. I just listened, letting the seconds stretch between us. Finally, I spoke, my voice soft but steady. "Now you know what it feels like to be forgotten." I could hear her catch her breath, the faint sound of disbelief or maybe shame. But I didn't care. I didn't need her reaction. I didn't need her apology or her tears. I had lived without her approval for years. I had built a life on my own terms. I ended the call. I watched the screen go dark and felt a strange calm settle over me. No guilt. No anger. Just the quiet understanding that I was free. This time, it was me who didn't hang on, who didn't bend or forgive simply because I was supposed to. I stepped outside onto my porch, the air cool and still. The trees whispered in the evening breeze, and the fading sunlight painted the sky with soft shades of orange and pink. I felt the weight of the past lift, replaced by the quiet strength of someone who had survived and reclaimed herself. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to earn her love, all the nights I had waited for approval that never came. I had carried that burden for too long, and now it was gone. I didn't need anyone else to validate me. I had validation in every choice I had made, every step I had taken toward building a life that belonged only to me. For the first time in my life, I felt fully unchained. The mistakes, the betrayal, the pain, they were all behind me. What mattered now was the life I had created, the peace I had earned, and the freedom to walk forward without looking back. I closed the door behind me, took a deep breath, and felt the evening air fill my lungs. I was whole, I was free, and I was finally my own person. This time, I was the one who didn't hang on.